Welcome to your favorite comic book channel, Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Geof Darrow in the house with us today, and perfect guest host when it comes to Richard Corben and talking Den in particular. Dark Horse is doing the Comic Lord's work these days by getting the rights to do, I guess, the complete Richard Corben collection. There was Murky World, not to be confused with Mutant World, which will probably be a future release, is the first volume to come out. The second is Den, and it's part one of Den. I think there will be 2 or 3 parts of Den when it's all said and done, and this will be the material that was in the very first issues of Heavy Metal, first half dozen or so issues of Heavy Metal. Geof, we talked to you extensively. I feel like we can't even show this, man.
Oh, maybe put your thumb over the offensive part. I do it just to illustrate, like, Dark Horse is really doing nice work with these collections.
Yeah.
You know, it's a beautiful dust cover, but look at the actual art on the inside edition.
Yeah, I should actually make note too. They really darkened this image just because they have to obscure the titties on the cover. Because if you see, it's a very famous image, and it's much lighter, but there's almost no pages without titties or a big fucking swinging piece of meat between Den's legs. This video is brought to you by the Cartoonist Kayfabe Patreon. There are 3 levels of support at our Patreon, and the King Kayfabers get access to our live stream recording sessions that make it possible to mitigate the kayfabe effect. They also get the videos before anybody else. So make sure you support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel and get that early access. Ultimately, the videos are brought to you by the books that we make. You're looking at a healthy sample of our bibliography right in front of you. Jimmy's next book is going to be Street Angel, Princess of Poverty. It's coming to you in November. It's going to be a companion piece to Street Angel, Deadliest Girl Alive, in that it collects all of the material that was published prior to the Image Comics release. Jimmy also has Hulk Grand Design out there in the wild. Limited copies available. Make sure you get your hands on that as soon as possible. And the latest comic that Jimmy has right now, which is sold out, but he has promised to reprint this thing. True Crime Funnies, 3 nonfiction stories, including one that has a little something to do with some wrestling. Hip Hop Family Tree Omnibus is coming to you in October, just in time for the holidays, collecting all 4 volumes of Hip Hop Family Tree with 150 pages of additionals. Also for the holiday season is X-Men Grand Design Trilogy, which is going to include the out-of-print X-Men Grand Design works that I put together, about a 250, 260-page trade paperback. Red Room is the current focus. 2 trade paperbacks of Red Room are out there right now. The comic I'm putting out these days is Red Room Crypto Killers. It's going to be 4 issues total. 3 issues are out right now. The centerpiece for issue 3, the backup feature, includes the first appearance of the characters that I'm using in my daily strip, which I'm serializing on my Patreon. Tom's in the house with us this round. He's got the hardcover I Am Stan coming to you sooner than later. I believe it comes out in September. We did a big video on this, and you guys showed up in a big bad way and started to do your pre-orders. Make sure you get your hands on this. This is a definitive documentary on Stan Lee. And the paperback version of his Jack Kirby biography is coming out sooner than later as well. Now that we're done paying the bills, back to the video. So we're not even going to be able to look at very many pages of this comic, to be honest, man. So it'll pretty much just be us chatting it up. Geof, did you grab Heavy Metal from the start, or did you know Metal Hurlant before Heavy Metal started coming out?
I'm even kind of a snob. I had all that stuff because I'd started getting Metal Hurlant, and for some reason I would show that stuff to people. Nobody ever wanted to look at it because, well, it's in French. Like, yeah, but Jesus, look at this
how
stuff.
would you get it, Geof? Bud Plant or something?
In Chicago. Well, in Chicago, well, there was a French bookstore in Chicago, and they carried it. They had magazines, and they had it. And there was also a comic store called Larry's Comics, and he was amazing. The place was just like a hoarder's home. I mean, comics were just in a stack. We went in and said, Larry, do you have any back issues of Batman? And I'll look over there in a pile. And there'd just be piles of comics. You'd have to go through all of them. I mean, you'd have Archie, then Batman, then Wendy, and then you'd be about 5 stacks before you'd find anything you want. But he had Metal Hurlants, and he also had 2000 ADs. He got that stuff. And, that's where I'd pick them up. And I just, because well, I was crazy about Mobius, and then they started having Corben in there because I know Mobius was a huge fan of Richard Corben.
Worth
So I
noting.
did. I picked up some of the heavy metal, but I had all that stuff, and
Worth noting, Jose Villarrubia is project art director. I think he's overseeing all of these
Yeah.
Richard Corben books.
yeah.
A fun guy to follow because he shows a lot of the pages and restoration and original art and things like that. And as we've said, anybody who's involved in doing these Corben collections is on my A list.
Totally. He does a foreword as well as Patton Oswalt does a foreword talking about his discovery
Yes.
of Dan of Corben's work.
And as I understand it, because I know, people at Dark Horse they've working with Corben, and I always say to them, "Well, geez, when are you going to put Den? When are you going to put Den out? Why don't you do Rolf?" And he wouldn't let him.
Hmm.
Right.
He didn't want that stuff out there. He said, "I got this new stuff." I guess maybe for him, he thought it was. I was like, "Oh my God!" And I'm just so thankful that his wife is allowing this stuff back into print because, God, it's ageless. It's not. It's like you say, "Oh, that might new stuff." I go, it's all good."
I'm doing a introduction for a future volume, and it's a volume of, I guess, maybe some of his last work that like it's not all fully lettered, and then the last little bit is kind of a little rougher than what the earlier work was. And man, it's so cool to get that access. They're really putting in some effort here. And if you take a look at page one, do you got your heavy metal one? This they relettered for the Dark Horse version, but beyond that, they have a team of letterers on the various books. So you could see that it was kind of typeset pasted up in the pages of heavy metal. It's so much more inviting to me. It's so much more readable in with what they did in the Dark Horse books. There is so much that I love about the typeset approach.
Skip 2 pages ahead.
Okay.
Trying to scout this to keep us friendly. You see, they switch fonts from that initial page in heavy metal to this one, and this runs through a lot of his work, and it's mechanical font, it's not Helvetica, but it's of that nature, a sans serif
Right.
font.
Right.
I don't mind this. Like a lot of the Fanagore stuff that Corben publishes himself in the 80s would be with this kind of mechanical font. So not too big of a deal for me. Where you see a big difference, I think, is in some of the whenever it's negative.
Yeah.
Definitely more readable. And it's Nate Picos is the letterer on this volume, and I mention that because he's the letterer, I believe, Geoff, on your Shaolin Cowboy, and Daniel
Yeah,
Chabin,
yeah,
the editor on both of those books. So
yeah,
you're pretty close to a lot of the creatives that are involved in this project.
yeah. And I think, which is unfortunate because then Daniel sends them to me. I don't have to. But I'd buy them. But I mean, a lot of this material I already have. But it's nice to have them in these beautiful collections.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's mind bending what this stuff looks like for being done in the 70s.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he had that access, and he had that technical know-how to play around with the plates and do all that stuff. But to me, it is the 70s. Like Patton Oswalt describes it as like the artwork that you would see on, Astro vans or
Right.
whatever, and pinball machines, and it does feel of that period. Part of it is the Roy G. Biv application. Like every page, you have the entire like spectrum of the rainbow will be employed, and uses of color that you've just never seen done before. But this is the first time, because I never had all of Den. I would just get random issues
Right.
of heavy metal, and
Yeah.
you would read the Richard Corben's pieces in there for sure, but it would be a middle chapter of some bigger work, Bloodstar or whatever. So this is my first time reading
Me too.
this in a cogent linear fashion, and it made me realize that he is an unsung originator, like a piece of inspiration for like Masters of the Universe, no doubt. Like those guys talk about Frazetta, of course, as being an important component to creating the He-Man action figures and stuff, but with the monsters and the Queen and a lot of the MacGuffins and stuff and the different kinds of monsters, those dudes were absolutely Richard Corben marks.
I don't know how you
And
could be a visual art fan and not be in love with Corben.
Yeah.
and the fact that, I mean, he wants to do comics. He wants to make his living doing comics. And what does he decide to do? A hero with a big dick that you see all the time. So he's automatically his audience. I mean, he's alien or not alienated. He's restricted his audience and his publishing abilities. I mean, if there
Right.
hadn't been heavy metal, who knows? Because I mean, even it's amazing that even heavy metal that they went, because America. I mean, any sort of genitalia, even saying the word genitalia would get you in trouble. But my God, that he would had the courage. Nope, this is my vision, and this is what it's going to be, and I don't give a shit if I don't, if I'm not going to be on the newsstand.
Think of
This is
another
what I want
page
to
that we could
do.
show off.
It's such a it's one of the oldest comic book tropes, the idea of like this kid transforming into this god, superhero, and the idea of making him naked and endowed. It's almost like you've taken that comic book nerd dream. We've all seen the Charles Atlas ads and whatnot, and you've really delivered.
Right.
You've delivered in a way that none of those ads actually do, and none of even the superhero stuff really does, until you get to Corben, and Corben's like, here's the real fantasy made into a comic.
And there's a female.
And with a sexual appetite. I mean, this
Yes.
guy had. I mean, that yeah.
He's going to save the day. He's going to get the girl. What's funny about that though is because this is Richard Corbis is a dude. Uh, there's a female who's like a spinster kind of novelist or something from the 1800s, and she goes through the time portal too. But she doesn't come out as like the female ideal. She comes out as like the dude ideal of a female. So she's super horny, big ass titties,
Yes.
childbearing hips. Basically, she becomes like exactly what this little pecker would want in a lady, man. And he starts out. He's got hold of some schematics from his dad. The writing, the first person approach, absolutely Lovecraftian. Totally, like getting a hold of a schematic, going to Radio Shack, putting it together, opening up a portal to another world. It's Corben is probably generation 2 away from the pulps, and it's clear that he read that stuff, the Burroughs stuff, the Lovecraft stuff, probably a little Tarzan in the mix as well.
Yeah, I'm
That,
sure.
that panel, right? That panel right
Robert E.
above
Howard,
your
I meant
finger
to say.
there.
Yeah, which one?
That panel, the fourth panel on that page. I swear to God, look where he's straddling the cliffs.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
His,
yeah.
and his junk is hanging down. It's in shadow, but it's like, oh my God. I mean, you don't
And
get to make Corbin too. Is that he would draw these women with super voluptuous women, and then he'd give them like some weird head. And as a young guy, I'd be looking at the guy, I'm turned on and I'm repulsed at the same time. I'm disgusted with myself for being attracted to this monster woman.
Some of the artwork here really makes me think, he was working for, I think, an industrial film company and, before he gets into the comics full time. And I think he works there for like 10 years. And this stuff reminds me so much of like the black and white 50s kind of movies that I would
Right.
see as a kid, to the point of almost, it makes me think that stuff left a mark on him where he was trying to emulate that visual.
Right.
Because these things feel like they could have
like a
been
stop
right
motion
out of
creator.
that. Yeah,
Creature.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're so solid as three-dimensional objects and sculptures. Even the creature feels like one of those special effects stop motion creatures.
It does.
And that creature is so well drawn. Like look at the just the anatomy, the bone structure on the as it walks. It's just amazing.
Yeah, man. And one of those early guys to employ that airbrush in comics work. So that sky scene right there, that pukey kind of sky, and it looks like there's like a face built in there. It's so trippy, very surreal. So it's hard to show fresh pages, huh, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Here, I'll show the back cover because like those bees. See, this is another one of those things. Like, just the imagination is off the chain, dude. And with the techniques and abilities he has creatively, and then the imagination to employ that with stuff that you just have never seen before. Like, would you not read a whole comic with just a team of these dudes?
Yeah, that stuff's amazing. And I do think it's worth noting, because we read this in fragments as kids, didn't really have a sense of the story. The story's an amazing fantasy story, right?
It
So
is.
his uncle disappears but leaves the plans as to how to make this like dimension hopping portal device. And then the next thing you know, the kid is followed looking for his uncle, right?
Right.
It's pretty clear. It's very easy to understand motivation of the characters.
Yeah.
And now you're in a strange, different world. You know, this is Alice in Wonderland here. Then it kind of goes off on an adventure, and it's easy to follow, and it's great fantasy. There's a whole world that Corben has constructed in Den.
It's true. There's a MacGuffin of what they call the Lochnar, and the Lochnar is the MacGuffin in the heavy metal cartoon movie. If you remember, it's the little orb that gets us from, the Mobius type scene to the Den sequence, of which John Candy is the voice of Den, which
Great
is
choice.
fantastic.
So
And
unlikely.
have you seen his short film? Because which I think he did before he did the comics.
He did. He did that even in the '60s, and they said that he was using company time and company resources
Yeah.
to produce that, and then he's some quiet nebbish at the office who's like doing his own thing, but then they discovered that he was doing this. He was drawing this stuff on tracing paper, so that he didn't have to have what do you call it, like animation cells and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And when they discovered what he was doing, they actually put in a budget for him to produce this thing in a more solid way. He redid the voice acting and shit, and he said that he's pretty sure it cost more money for the company than they would have liked to have spent.
But it then played at a couple of film festivals and did well. I think won an award at one of the film festivals that it played in.
Right.
So
They would show it at comic conventions, and that was like a holy grail for me to want to see it because I knew who he was, and I really liked his work. And I saw it at one of the what used to be the comic convention, which was Phil Souling's New York Comic Convention, and they'd run movies at night. And I finally got to see it because it was just impossible to see the thing.
they had it playing, I think, on a loop at Angoulême whenever he was,
Wow.
whenever they had the Corben show there.
He for Angoulême, he did a little thank you video that you can find on YouTube, and one of the clips, it shows this shelf of his sculptures that he uses for reference, and the sculptures look like his drawings, and then they also look like him in a
Yeah.
way. Like this muscle guy is definitely this is
That's
Richard
him.
Corben's face,
Yeah,
and I think he was a bodybuilder at some point.
he was, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, in this version, they have some of his sculptures.
Oh,
at
that's
the
so
very
cool.
beginning. Yeah, they got like that weird. Maybe I don't know if you can see it. That
Hold it
that
over a
we-
little closer
yeah.
to your head. There you go. The other way. The other way. There it is. Boom. Oh, that's so cool.
Then like this thing. This is an actual.
The other way. The other way.
That way, or
Like over your face. Yeah. Oh yeah, there it is. I think that's one of the pieces that was in that interview from Heavy Metal. Do you remember that interview he did in Heavy Metal, Jeff, where
I don't.
the guy who interviewed was such a fucking scumbag, was talking about Richard Corben's wife's boobs and stuff. Like, hey man, your wife doesn't got big bust and all this kind of shit. I'm gonna bust his lip.
Yeah, he issued like a retraction that he made Heavy Metal, or he asked
really?
Heavy Metal to print. Richard Corben did, and it's in there. It's kind of this amazing artifact because you get the interview, and then like an issue or two later, you get Corben like very unhappy with the interviewer.
There
first
is.
thing,
Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
first thing I ever saw by him was in a. Because I used to be a real big, still am a Edgar Rice Burroughs fan. There used to be a magazine, a fanzine called Herbdom, and you
Right.
could send in fan art. And one of them was this cover of the Thark from John Carter of Mars, and it was Corben,
Right.
and it was amazing. It was this airbrush thing. Who is this guy? And then later, I found, much later, I found these. Oh, that's that guy that did the Grim. Well, I found Den or Rolf, and then some of the, his. I can't think of what the names of his Fanagor Press comics were, but
Yeah, I think there was that one you were about to say it, man. Grim Wit.
Mm-hmm.
which is the
Yeah.
first appearance of Den, which I've never seen. You know, that like all this stuff that's being published right now and that's on the docket for at least the next year.
Mm.
It's all this like airbrushy color shit. But I
Yeah.
hope they do not sleep on that black and white, because to me that's an important piece of the puzzle to bring Ralph back into print.
It would be amazing to
Well,
have the
they're
collection
gonna
of
do
his
Rolf, because that's
undergrounds.
what I keep asking me. You're gonna do Rolf, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, all that shit.
I wonder if they'll get. I wonder if I imagine they can do the, the Edgar or the Robert E. Howard one. I can't think of the Valley of the Worm, which was a book yet. I ordered it. You had to order it. It was like before Kickstarter, and it took a year to finally get the thing, but it was, you know, because I always dreamed of Corben doing Conan. I thought he should be doing Conan.
Yeah, he'd be perfect for that gig. He seems built for it because once again, like there's Robert E. Howard built into this, that sense of questing, and some of the archetypes that he introduces are
Yeah,
very Howard like. But then the main kind of villain or whatever, it's Cthulhu backwards,
Right.
and they don't say by Crom, they say by Cthulhu. And when they let things loose, like that page there, what page is that, Jimmy?
Which one are you looking for?
With that, like all that color stuff happening, because I don't think there are any dicks on that. Yeah, what page is that?
Put your thumbs over. You can have this one.
Okay.
Just put your couple things there to
You
cover
know,
up.
what's happening, Uncle Geoff, is YouTube is getting tight with their algorithms, man. So,
yeah.
we don't want this to be an adults only video because so far fewer people see it.
The color here is so spectacular, and it is spectacular throughout this story
Absolutely.
and throughout most of Corben's work.
Right.
It's really great, though. Some of the extra text in this volume talks about the production.
Yeah.
Because it goes through several different changes as this story is being done, where he's like full on painting these as the story progresses,
Right.
based on the technology, what can be reproduced and everything. So it's interesting to see that progression as a guy who's doing process work unlike anybody else's process. You get a little bit of behind the scenes as to how he's doing that, whether it's painting the color separations early on or getting to the point where they can do full color reproduction.
What's real crazy though is that it feels cohesive throughout. Like if they didn't tell you, you might not even know.
Right.
Because they describe that there are parts where he's like inking and stuff, but he's such a weird creator that he'll do stuff where like here's a painted panel, but then he'll ink this one and then have the same kind of color. So it's all of a piece.
It really comes down, I think, to the guy's eye or girl, whoever it is, whatever artist you like. Like the great art, it's their brain and their eye more than a specific tool.
Right.
We I think young artists often, you want to fixate on what's the pen that you're drawing. What are you using here, Dave Cooper or
Right.
whoever. And it just isn't. Like you could give Corben whatever, an airbrush, a paintbrush, an ink brush, and he's going to produce work that looks like Richard Corben. And,
Right.
and I think that sometimes we spend too much time on the technical side, but I do like having a document that talks about it because he definitely used processes that nobody else did in comics.
Absolutely. Any final meditations on the Den story, Uncle Geoff, before we get out of here?
People should buy it and learn from it, because it just, yeah, it's a masterwork of a guy that I mean, did what he wanted. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and buy it because I want to see this library continue.
Yes.
I mean, if they don't sell, you can only make so many of these lavish books if you don't have the numbers behind it. And everybody that's a fan of comics, like, you'll be sad whenever these are unavailable because they go out of print.
Yeah, man.
Or they don't print enough of them for everyone who wants one.
Just learn so much from them, and it just that back cover you're showing, just the inspiration of thinking outside of the box, and that's what so many I wish people would. And I'm nothing against DC and Marvel comics, but look outside those comics, because it'll open up a whole other world, and you can bring that to your one of, if you want to do Marvel or DC or anything. It'll just inspire you and think, yeah, it doesn't have to be like this.
Yeah, and Dark Horse is doing it right. I think, man. Where they'll do something like a Murky World that isn't considered like one of his major hits, or it's not like it's not, but it's a newer work, and he had such a back catalog of the stuff that is at the front of people's thoughts. but that's volume 1. That's the first book to come out. But then they give you some juice with the second one. And if they keep that tandem up, I will be very satisfied, because then you could exhaust the color and then give me some of that black and white. I like that black and white
Me
stuff.
too.
His rats in the wall story and stuff like that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, there's no shortage of what they can do with it.
Yeah.
And you know what was interesting? We've looked at Murky World for everybody. If you haven't seen our video on Murky World, check that out. We've done a lot of Corben. We have a playlist.
We have a Richard Corben playlist, yes.
There's a lot of parallels with Murky World and Den, in terms of going to another world. It's kind of exciting to me to see that, too, to see themes that go throughout like an artist's life. I mean, this is beginning. Murky World's near the end, so it's kind of cool.
He does kind of make the same
Rip in Time. Do you remember? Did you ever see Rip in Time?
Oh, yeah. Got the issues for that.
Yes. That's a 1980. That's part of the 1986 scene.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely.
Dinosaurs and God.
And cops. Dinosaurs and cops.
Yeah.
That's like the ad tagline on that one.
Geof, thanks so much for joining us. Before we get out of here, man, let's give a plug.
Yeah, everybody, if you haven't picked up Shaolin Cowboy, Cruel to Be Kin, this is Geof Darrow's newest book, and you can see it stacking up on the Den book. It's even bigger than the Den book, so a nice oversized collection of Geof Darrow artwork.
Yeah, for sure. Anything on the horizon, Geof, or is your art appearing in any place in print that we need to let the people know about, or?
I'm me. I'm working on another one, and another Shaolin Cowboy, and I do covers here and there. I did a Hellboy cover.
I'm super excited about the next Shaolin, because you took with us with a feather and said that like you got some of the ideas when we were in Japan.
Yeah. Yes, but it won't be what you think. You think, what that? Why would you? Why is this your takeaway from Tokyo?
Can't wait to see it, Geof. Thanks so much for coming by to talk Richard Corben with us, and let's do it again soon.
Thank you for having me.